So we were going to talk about top IT problems, top outsourced IT problems today, and just some of the things that you encounter, Kyle. You work with a lot of different MSPs. How many MSPs are you working with these days?
Sierra Pacific, we're in like the 1,000 range at this point, 1,000 plus.
Wow.
Personally, I work directly with anywhere between 5 and 10 per year. And typically my client rhythm is about 1.5 years before I swap out clients. So it's about 1.5 years relationship. I think last time report I ran on that was like 18 months. And I've been doing it for the last 6 years.
Okay. So Kyle, I got started in IT services in 1997. I got started with a retail store and then became a service center and did field service. And, right now we have about 50 clients and we're working throughout Virginia, Maryland, Washington, DC. We've got a team of about 25. How did you get started in MSP land?
How did I get started? That's a fun one. So when I was 15 years old, after years of being a kind of a computer nerd, I got in trouble. And when I got in trouble, my punishment in high school was to go fix all the school computers because they knew that I could do it. One of the football coaches had told them that I was kind of a geek. Well, after fixing it all, it turns out that Geek Squad was opening their first stores on the West Coast.
Okay.
So somehow they basically said, hey, this kid actually, he's kind of a punk kid, but you should probably hire him because he's really fast. He fixed like 300 computers in like a day. And all I did was this basic like telnet commands. Anywho, long story short, Best Buy recruited me and quickly found out that I wasn't 16 years old. So the Geek Squad bug keys got taken away from me. And they said, hey, rather than being our field services guy, how about you be a manager?
Okay.
Horrible decision on their part, right? So I literally got thrown in IT management the day I turned 16.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I was managing 5 other guys. Obviously, they were all older than me, so it was a little bit awkward. But real quickly, I had to learn kind of always having to be kind of the guy thinking ahead, because they would always try to use my age as the crutch or the reason that they didn't have to listen to me. So real quickly, I learned a crash course in documentation and expectation setting, because those were the tools that I always had. And also in that, being face-to-face, as you probably know, Ian, with retail customers, dealing IT from a retail perspective where you are face-to-face with them gives you a lesson in hard knocks when it comes to making clients happy and also dealing with difficult customers. And being able to, read what clients want. I mean, when mom walks into Geek Squad and is in tears because she just lost the last 5 years of her child's photos because she never backed up her laptop, right? Those are the things that you really get faced with in retail.
Yeah.
Right. You have a mother crying and you have to find a way to turn it around and have basically find a way to make it better for her, give her solutions to make her feel better. And it's funny because throughout my career, what I find is having success with IT business owners that have dealt with customers in all facets, not just from like a sysadmin perspective, they become a higher tier of engineer, higher tier of IT professional, because they don't always look at it from the binary perspective, right? It's not always just 1 or 0, the computer does it or doesn't do it. You start to always think of, okay, well, what is the user doing? What is the user expecting? What is the user trying to accomplish? And you start there rather than starting at, is it technically possible?
Yeah.
And throughout my career, I've always learned that having a lesson, and I think also, Ian, some of the stuff that you and I have kind of talked about, having your technical staff always have a lesson when it comes to the soft skills or the soft approach or the client success account manager perspective is a better relationship for the long haul. Because at the end of the day, the client, yourself, you can figure out the hard stuff, right? I can do a Google search and tell you if it's possible or not from a technical perspective. But the vision, being able to take a client's right, our expectation from a architect perspective, right? You give me the expectation, and I'm not going to say no right away because of the technical limitations. I'm going to think outside the box and go, how do I design this beginning to end? And I think that is kind of where my technological career, or my career in IT, has kind of always started from. Is all my clients, I always look at them as they're coming to me to know the hard knowledge, but also be able to turn their vision into reality.
Yeah.
And rather than just throwing always up in the air and saying, oh, Windows can't do that, a Mac can't do that, a firewall won't allow this, or whatever have you, it's always a conversation. There's not a yes or no. Let's, if we have to use 4 things to make this happen, or 2 processes to make this happen, or if we need to wait a little bit because there's a technology coming up, or if the client wants to be a beta tester, right? Hey, there's this new thing, I've never used it before, right? Set that expectation. This might be cool, this might not suck, but I'm gonna have fun with you to develop this. Let's do it together.
Or heaven forbid, an old-fashioned checklist.
Oh, or an old-fashioned checklist, right? Just, putting that old school manager hat on of, hey, here's the 10 steps to do what you need to do, right? Think of a project manager, think of a project coordinator, think of, right, the ITIL process.
Yeah.
A lot of it is layered, a lot of it are steps. And when you make it simple, you don't overcomplicate it, you're always going to be a little bit closer to success. Your staff will appreciate you. And yeah, you're always going to, and I'm kind of getting detracted from your majority question, but that's kind of where I always had my IT businesses focused. I've always told you account management to me is the most important role other than a documentation. Those are the 2 things that really drive an IT business. Is it's being able to have someone be the translator, someone to be to help build the vision and to make sure the vision is never lost. And a lot of times with IT services, we get so hung up in the technical that the client's vision gets lost, and we start to manage our clients by the technical limitations or the technical best practices. And I hate to say it, a lot of times that doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, we can throw it in the trash. We can say, no, let's have an old-fashioned checklist. No, okay, there's, regulatory guidelines. So I'm just going to, either decide to do it or not do it. There's always an answer to try to create that vision.
Absolutely. Well, this is going to be good because it sounds like we didn't realize, but we both share a lot of similarities in our background. I started working on computers in my high school as well, very similarly. And I turned down a job at Montgomery Ward in '97 to start my own IT shop at the age of 18. So we've had a lot of similar life experiences. So some of the problems I see when customers are switching from their current IT solution to EN computers, and then I've also seen some of these problems in my business over the years as we've matured. I've got these broken down into sort of different departments, and the help desk service levels. I mean, that is one that's, front and center. It seems like an IT person, I mean, you can suck at just about everything else in IT, but if you don't answer the phone and talk to people on the help desk and get things fixed, that is kind of IT 101. Your projects can suck, your budgeting and vision can suck, but if you don't answer the phone and fix the email issue that they're having that day, that definitely will get you out the door pretty quickly. So these are some of the ones that I was thinking of. Maybe you can add some to the board, or talk a little bit about some of the root causes that you see around these types of issues.
Tier 1 is always funny to me, or whatever you would call the first line of defense when it comes to a help desk, because no one wants to be caught dealing with that tier, right? It's always the remedial stuff of why does this keep breaking, or how did this happen, or even sometimes a lack of knowledge on some of your staff. Maybe there's a too complicated process for a technology business or a business owner that they have never thought of or had never tried to traverse, right? Do I make my end users technology simpler? That's why they're having to call help desk.
Yeah.
And there's 2 sides of the coin. It is a necessary evil. I think, yes, like you said, Ian, there is a level where tier 1 is necessary. Now, where a lot of technology businesses or IT providers sometimes fail is they treat it like, I don't want to, the word I'm looking for, I can't really come into terms, but the idea is that the way that I see a lot of them get treated is, I'm not going to focus on my tier one. I'm just going to let it happen. And honestly, even some IT businesses that I consult with, they, if they could just throw it in the trash and never have it, they would. There's no appreciation for it.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's kind of a weird thing to me sometimes, because they also think on the back end, I'm going to force my client to pay for all the inadequacies right out the gate. I'm not going to learn your vision. I'm just going to do everything I can from a technical limitation, like I was talking about earlier, to try to just make you not have help desk level issues. I'm just going to resolve it through my client's wallet. And that can be frustrating to a lot of business owners is, hey, right, I never had the option to budget to upgrade some technology, or maybe a business owner has been positioned with bad technology from bad advice or some bad financial years that they can't afford to upgrade to some solutions.
Usually
And
bad software.
or bad software, right? There's so many reasons on why that as a business owner that I might have to rely on a help desk, and to just sweep it under the rug or be charged handsomely for it doesn't really make sense either. Now, that is where a lot of times, again, getting back into the vision, getting back into the soft skills come into play. Because I think if you're always talking about your tier one, you're always talking about your help desk, you have more opportunities to address the items that can be addressed that also meet a level of vision that the client is looking for. So what do I mean by that? Let's say, using a rough example, Susie at the front desk, her email is just always slow. It's just always causing problems. She's opening help desk tickets a lot. Now, Susie, she's somewhat technically proficient. She's not, I would say, if I put a scale of 1 to 10, she's up to like 4 or 5 level. She knows just enough to get her job done, and she's a good employee. Well, what you'll see a lot of times is IT firms, or poor performing IT firms, they will just simply push off the ticket. They won't get to it very fast. Susie's sitting there and unable to send emails because it's a low priority ticket. And then at the end of the day, they'll get to it, and there's probably a few check boxes or some third-party system they can go into and clear out to make her email issues go away. But then that happens repeatedly. And a lot of IT firms, sometimes they get so hung up in it that they don't take the time then to look at Susie's ticket load and go, hey, Susie opens a lot of tier 1 tickets. What can we do to help Susie? And if you were to look into the backbone, they may go, hey, maybe there's a different email provider out there, looks identical from a standard of use for Susie, but doesn't have these technical limitations where she's opening a ticket once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week. She's now more productive as an employee, meaning that the business owner now is making a higher ROI on their employee and their IT purchase and their IT service that they are paying for. And a lot of times too, as a business owner, salary is your number one overhead. That is the number one hit to your bottom line that is causing you as a business to either be profitable or unprofitable. So you need those people working and working fast. So while there is some level of analysis that needs to happen, we also as IT firms have to understand that we need to get your employees back up and working. So I think there needs to be a mutual respect of expectation setting as well as getting to those tickets. Both from a proactive and a reactive perspective. There's some other things that you have on here as well: inconsistent staffing, slow service. I think they all kind of get bundled into that as well, because on the help desk as well, inconsistent staffing, there needs to be an expectation. A well-running IT firm is going to have a help desk that's basically can't fail. Things have to be there, expectations need to be set, and these are individuals that need to be in a seat, working, functioning, high utilization. Utilization, right, that's your standard billable versus total hours that are working. Now, if I have a help desk that is average 60% utilization, there's going to be some inconsistency, that tells me, because that inconsistency then is saying that these guys have a lot of free time. And when there's free time, they might be getting side projects. When they're getting side projects, they may not have a primary objective to delivering service to clients to get your staff working again. Where when you have high utilization, that means there's very little amounts of time for admin work, extra credit stuff, meaning that their primary objective is always going to be servicing the client and delivering service quickly, because you need to have that staff just there waiting for the tickets and get it done. And I think that kind of also goes into this lack of transparency of where your service request stands. SLAs are, it's like a niche term, service level agreements, where I should have very transparent level of service based off of if my staff is working as a business owner, right? Are my systems up? If I open a ticket because my printer's slow versus we can't go on the internet, there's a different level of priority in that, because that is either one, my staff is a little bit reduced in productivity as a business owner, or my entire staff is sitting there doing nothing because they require internet to do their job.
Yeah, a lot of times I just hear from prospects, hey, the service desk is a black hole. I call them, but then I have to call them again to find out where the issue stands. I don't hear back.
Exactly. And that's because no one's looking at the tickets for the content, right? We don't have, and a lot of, I guess, kind of taking a step back, Ian, what you're really going into is, am I triaging or am I curating the requests that are coming in? If I have a curator, sometimes you'll hear them called an operations specialist, you'll hear them called a triager or a dispatcher. Are they looking at all the tickets coming in? And then am I taking those tickets and going, okay, this is a high priority ticket, or this is a low priority ticket, or this is a ticket I can get to next week? Sometimes we get requests on help desk saying, hey, get to it when you can. If we can at some point, I want to make my desktop background red instead of blue.
Right. It feels like a lot of times, the tickets get sort of siloed into a technician. The technician gets busy and, just doesn't have the time to follow up with all of it. And, and then sort of the next issue may go to somebody else because that person's tied up now on a project or they're tied up out on site. So then, people lose track of what's going on. They get frustrated. There's not enough documentation because it's like, well, that client always goes to Brian. He's sort of the point of contact for him, but Brian can't do everything. So, then it's inconsistent staffing. So it's kind of a lot of things that sort of wrap around the axle there to make a challenging experience. Because the client always wants to be able to call the help desk 24/7 usually, and get some sort of a response. But you can't always have the same person answering the phone all the time. So it's actually pretty three-dimensional to manage that.
It is, and that's why I go back to that utilization example. If you start giving your help desk guys too many extra hats, you start giving them too many extra tasks, their priority is going to shift. Which means if their priority is shifting, your client's level of service is going to shift. Because now, Johnny on the help desk is now working on some side project. And when that phone is ringing, maybe he's on the phone with another vendor for this side project and can't pick up the phone. Now your level of service is degrading.
So one of the things a prospect could do is ask, do you have a dedicated help desk? Or are the people on your help desk also out in the field or working on projects? A lot of IT companies don't really have a dedicated help desk.
No, they don't, nor do they have that curator person we're talking about, that dispatcher. They don't have someone dedicated there either to look at those tickets or to watch those tickets. There's a second function we haven't talked about that you just touched on that I don't want to forget about, which is, say Johnny, he is a dedicated help desk guy. I assigned him 4 tickets to knock out today. Two of those tickets were a high priority, like those things just had to get done, and the other 2 like a low priority. Let's just say Johnny's having a rough day. And Johnny goes high priority ticket and then grabs a low priority ticket. That other high priority ticket's just sitting there unattended, waiting. That curator, that dispatcher, a well-focused IT firm, they're going to have that dispatcher operations or even a manager having thresholds where if that ticket's not addressed in that SLA, that service level agreement timeframe, that they're going to go to Johnny and say, okay, what's up? Or they're going to take that ticket away from Johnny. They're going to give it to somebody else and say, get that done now. Because there's a level of guarantee that we have to have. And that's another thing, going back to what a prospect can maybe ask is, what are your service level agreements? What is the guarantee that you're going to get to my tickets for when my users are not working? When am I losing money on my most expensive resource, which is my staff being unproductive? Right. And I think that's another thing to kind of talk about is, what are those SLAs? If I have a high priority ticket and my staff isn't working, are you going to get to me in 30 minutes, an hour, a day, 2 days? Right? When can I start following up with you? And then again, managing that agreement.
Yeah, we've been around at Ian Computers for, I don't know, 22 years now, and probably only in the past 5 years did we really start getting the hiring for a dispatcher, having a service manager that's providing that oversight at the SLA level, the dispatcher schedule out, all of the, coordinate the work per SLA.
Well, and
Yeah,
that's an easy one to understand for you and I, Ian.
yeah,
And that is because dispatchers are a resource that costs money, right?
yeah.
A
You have
well-focused.
to have, we got there probably around 22, 25 employees.
Yep.
Before that, it was just, the techs kind of managing their own day, like you're saying, and and missing stuff, and you didn't know about it until you had an angry customer.
No, and what's great about, when you get to that 25 user mark without someone watching those requests is you can deliver service a little bit cheaper. So if we go into what prospects can look for, right? Some of the cheapest MSPs may not have SLAs. They might not have someone watching your tickets come in because they're all going to, think of an analogy, a big old bucket full of a bunch of tickets, and their engineers are reaching in, grabbing a ticket and working it because no one's holding them accountable. Where a top performing IT firm is going to be paying to have someone just to sit there and watch your tickets. Now, unfortunately, but what that does is mean sometimes you get a quality of service when you pay for a higher tier IT firm. A lot of people tell me, when I consult with them, if, oh, I want my IT services cheaper, I want it cheaper, I want it cheaper. Well, then the clients that are going to be looking for you aren't going to be looking for best in class IT services because they don't care if their agreements are being met because you don't have anyone to sit there and watch it. We're not at a point where artificial intelligence is able to look at a user's request and go, oh, they use the word do this now versus do it whenever, and being able to automatically triage that priority. A human being has to read that ticket, look at the language and go, do I need to call this user today or do I need to call them in a week?
Yeah.
Better IT firms are going to have more resources to protect the client and the business owner to make sure that their staff is functioning when it comes to their technology.
And to onboard the users correctly and say, this is what you have to do to report in an issue so we know whether we're going to call you today or next week.
Oh, there's a whole level of documentation on
Yeah.
here we haven't even hit, right?
Yeah. Well, let's move along. IT planning and budgeting. I've got this category of one more, but or maybe two more. But this one is this one's fun. You talked about that vision. I think that this is really the one, and it kind of goes in with the documentation. Having the self-assessments. IT compliance is a big one too, which is really heavy on documentation. I think the most common thing that I hear from prospects is, my IT firm never told me about it until it was too late. Like your initial thing, the mother walking into the Best Buy and she lost her 5 years of photos and she's crying. And that's when you're trying to have the conversation, setting her up for success. When she's sort of struggling with two issues now, she's trying to just get back to normal. And now you're trying to also implement a plan to solve it from happening next time. And really, in that case, you're also double hitting her with the fees because you're having to just restore normal, and now you're probably having to build something new on top while somebody is in a state where they're already behind probably on their work and feeling off balance. That's really probably the number one frustration.
Totally. And for prospects, in the event that your IT firm that you've had a relationship for any bit longer than 6 months, if they are bringing you a laundry list of things that they're telling you that you have to buy, they are not properly managing your IT stack.
Huh.
One of the things that a real well-formed IT firm should be doing is road mapping, technology business planning. Meaning if you were to look at your technology, and Ian, I've had the same situation at my MSPs where I had competitors, clients coming to me saying, hey, my IT firm just said that I need to buy $200,000 in technology.
Yeah.
And when I asked them why, they said the switch was 14 years old. Well, how come you didn't tell, they've been at my IT firm for 7 years. How come they didn't tell me 7 years ago that my switch was
Right.
right? How come now I need to foot the bill today? How come I couldn't have paid for that last year when I had budget for more hardware last year and they told me I didn't need to buy anything?
Right. Yeah.
I think you get the same thing, which is if your team is not working with you to help build your vision, but also build the vision from a financial and a budgetary standpoint, then they're sweeping stuff under the rug or they're not paying attention to your network. Because they should be able to, just as we have to, you guys have to budget as a client, we have to budget our time and deliver service to you guys in a way that we can deliver it adequately. Meaning, we want to budget it with you. We want to know when you want to upgrade that switch. We want to know when you want to buy that switch and when I can install that switch. And if we can plan that in January to December, June to June, doesn't matter when the years are, to plan it so that you guys can have the money ready to go to spend to upgrade that technology. That's the type of relationship you have to have with your IT firm, and the IT firm has to have with you, right? We don't want to sell you things just to sell them. We want it to sell it to you so that your staff stays productive.
Right.
Again, right, going back to the technology, I don't care about the hard stuff, I care about the soft stuff, right? That's that relationship, that vision. Yeah, if your technology business or technology firm isn't, or IT firm isn't working with you to budget your upgrades, to budget your licenses, your warranty renewals, all of that, then they are not managing you guys, your business adequately enough. They're just going to spring you random bills, and you're going to have a reserve just ready for IT to come to tell you, hey, I need 100 grand, or you're going to tell them no, and now your network is at risk because you're on old hardware that they never told you about.
Yeah. So that when it comes time to actually get around to installing those new hardware, you know, people do all sorts of big projects, and sometimes sometimes those fail dramatically, and we get new business because of that. But you know, more often than not, it's just PC installations. I mean, let's face it, just setting up a PC for a key employee or a key position in a manufacturing facility, it can be a lot of work, and a lot of things can go wrong.
Yep.
And you know, you have 3, 4, 5 of those go wrong, and oftentimes prospects are out the door and shopping for a new service provider.
Yep.
But you know, a lot of the things here are you know, kind of feed back into that help desk and to the you know, the overall vision for the account. You know, you know, because projects are often sort of the foundation of relationships with clients. Often when you get a new client, it's because they want a big project done. So if the projects aren't done right, it can have downstream effects for years.
Mm-hmm. It's funny because it's the same logic that we just talked about with help desk that I think applies to installs, projects, big type of engagements, which at the end of the day, the technical resource needs to stay on point, but the technical resource isn't where it stops. Just like on the help desk where we had the operational, the curator of the tickets, the triager of those tickets, there's a level of service on the project side that is just as important from an organizational standpoint. Your project managers are very important, your account managers and your project coordinators, or that do a lot of your documentation type work. Because in that organization of a project, there's going to be things like downtime, right? Again, going back to business owners having salaries of people that aren't being productive, and then also looking at things like, hey, we might have a change in an upgrade if we upgrade a piece of software, meaning my users might need additional training. They may not know how to use things. That's more downtime, right? There's a lot of planning that has to go into place, even a new computer setup. You know, if we go back to Susie at the front desk and we bring her a laptop over a desktop, she may not realize that when she shuts that laptop lid, the computer goes to sleep, which may make a time clock software go down, right? There's some planning that has to happen that even with a computer that has to be logistically designed.
Yeah.
We need to coordinate those, right? Hey, is it okay if I work on Susie's computer Friday at 3 o'clock? Oh, she clocks out at 2 o'clock? Great, well then can I be there at 2 o'clock? Right? You start to work within those windows that it's going to be productive for even the business owner to have sometimes outages. Maybe we find out if we had a phone call saying, hey, that switch example, it's going to take me 5 hours to replace the switch and your network's going to be down about an hour and a half. If you have that planning, I may find out from a client that, oh, hey, they're taking a company day. So next Friday, they close at noon. So if we can do the switch install after Friday at 12 o'clock, there's no added downtime to the client experience. And not only that, as a technology-owned business owner, my IT firm now has a little bit longer of a window to work on that switch to increase the quality of the work. And you brought up an interesting point there, the documentation of that work. I urge anyone that is assessing their current IT firm to ask them to see the documentation they have on their network. A well-running, highly mature MSP is going to have a plethora of documentation, whether it be in an ITIL format or something that they've made their own, documented on each client that they have that is easily accessible by all of their team, being the IT firm, and it is also in a secure manner so that anytime we replace a computer, we update something, we as in the IT firm, there's a custom piece of software that needs to be installed on every computer where you're going to have instructions as a mature IT firm outlining how to install that piece of software, who to call when something goes down, account numbers for certain vendors if we need to reach out to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you talk to your IT firm and you ask them to see the documentation and they send you like a half a page PDF or Word document, that might be the quality that you're paying for.
Yeah. You brought up a really interesting point, having the project manager. In other words, so you're, we've been around for 22 years. In the past year, we got full-time project managers that were just dedicated to managing projects. Where it was like giving birth to a baby, getting engineers away from trying to manage the projects themselves, which inevitably they would do some things really well, but often miss a lot of other things like customer expectations in the process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, project manager. So if you put yourself in the seat of an IT professional, we are getting nothing but bombarded with requests, tickets, go fix this, go fix that, go do this, go do that. Even the most organized IT professional needs help on a logistical front because there are so many things that are being thrown at us. Everything is beeping, everything is emailing us, everything is calling us, things are going off. That when you have a project management professional, someone that is dedicated to just making sure that things get done on a timely basis, that is a direct example of an IT firm that has matured to the point where they recognize that IT is an industry where IT professionals don't have the time to be well organized. Even if they're the most organized individual, it is, you are putting your head in the sand if you think your IT resources can manage massive projects without dropping something here or there.
Yeah, and it's especially challenging because oftentimes projects are done after hours and on nights and weekends. So the next section here, I think this is our last, is value and billing. This is something that ultimately can be the final nail in the coffin. And one of the things that just sort of wrapping up here on value and billing. So oftentimes IT vendors are asking for a lot of additional services. So the static IP address, expensive internet. There's the direct costs that the IT firm is incurring, but then there's all those indirect costs, the AWS invoice that's hitting your credit card every month, or the remote control or antivirus tools, or other things that oftentimes, we will be talking with a prospect and they may have some questions around their bill, but once you really start understanding what's going on, we've talked to people where their IT bill is only maybe a quarter or 15% of their overall spend because their vendor has all of these other things that are sort of coming at them that land on their lap to manage, including sometimes hiring dedicated staff to manage the vendor because the vendor is so challenging to work with that you really need to have a dedicated person to be sort of the liaison with them.
Mm-hmm.
So this value section can be a big one.
It's a huge one. And I think when you find a best-in-class managed service provider, managed IT firm, what you will see is that they're not talking to you from a a nickel and dime perspective. They're always having very high level budgeting conversations. One of the terms that gets thrown out once in a while is virtual CIO, Chief Information Officer. And think of this as when you see an IT firm and you ask them as a prospect, do you have these CIO services? If they do, and you decide to go with a firm like that, I encourage prospects to have a very transparent conversation with their IT firm. When it comes to budget, let them know your budget. Let them know your savings goals. Let them know what they need to do from a technology aspect to make their technology work for you, and especially from a budgetary financial perspective. IT stuff is not cheap. IT services are not cheap. Web services are not cheap. We are in an era where everything, it comes at an expense, and man, they will nickel and dime you everywhere. If you have an IT firm that has never asked you how much you're paying for internet, if they have an IT firm that's never said, hey, I know that you're hosting your backups in AWS, but I think we can move them over here and hear me out, but it's going to save you like 10 grand a year, then that's when you need to start asking questions and you need to start holding your IT firm to a higher level, because that is what you would get if you had an internal CIO or a CFO that's looking at bottom line items, because he understands that there are going to be other aspects of technology that you might end up needing to spend more money on, right? Susie at the front desk, we get her new email solution. We talked about it. Maybe that new email solution, while it makes her more productive, is a little bit more expensive. Good IT firms should be asking, hey, where can I save you money? Or on the flip side, if I know that my client as a well-running IT firm is going to have to spend more money, I'm going to let them know during that project, right? Getting back to the whole project conversation, if you came to me as a client and said, hey, I'm buying a new piece of software, or I'm coming to you saying, hey, you need to replace some servers, here's some options. What I need to do as that virtual CIO or as the IT firm is let you know not only the costs that may increase from my solution, but like Brent mentioned, Ian, things like static IPs or faster internet, right? If I say, hey, let's move your backup to the cloud, I don't want to sell you the new backup hardware, the appliance that's going to sit in your office. I also want to let you know at that time, hey, if you go with this solution, then you will also need to upgrade your internet. So part of the decision process, that might make you go, great. Then if we have to upgrade our internet, that's an extra $200 a month. That's another $3,600 over 3 years. So I want to wait till the end of next year to do that solution. Not that I'm not going to do it, but I can budget for it next year. Surprise nickel and diming things is a sign of an immature managed IT firm that isn't spending the time to adequately build out your scope of work, right? Build out that project management rhythm to make sure that those items that are going to incur cost happen. And not only that, happen to a level of expectation that you already had. And then on the back end, going back to a previous thing about project management, that I'm not saying, okay, go buy that services when the project isn't going to happen for 3 months. If I have a well-ran project management team, I'm going to call you in 3 months and say, hey, look, we're about 2 weeks out from needing that faster internet. So now is a good time to add it. So we didn't just incur 2 months of unforeseen expenses.
Right. So what we really like to do at Ian Computers is we provide a virtual CTO role for clients that have some IT staff. That allows their IT staff to really focus in on the CIO, the information they focus on the information that needs to go to these systems. And we focus on the platforms. You know, is it AWS or Azure? Is it one internet service provider over another to get you the best value? So we'll focus on the technology, let them focus internally on the information, because we're not going to know what they need to put into their ERP system to invoice their customers correctly. So that enables us to both have a clear lane to work in, and for them to really focus on adding value instead of having to manage a vendor that, you know, like you're saying, is an immature vendor. They can really focus on something that is adding a huge amount of value to their business, while we focus on delivering the sort of the baseline technology infrastructure.
Yeah, if you have a technology firm that's billing you for things that you're like, why did I even need this? Or why did I even sign up for it? That's a sure sign way that they don't understand your vision as a business owner, right? At the end of the day, as a technology business, owner myself, and as also having ran IT firms, at the end of the day, I'm never looking to have retroactive um, change orders or retroactive billing because we forgot to tell you something. A lot of times it should all be within the predicted expectation of the project or of the service that is being offered. And if your IT firm isn't looking at ways to save you money or at ways to have the project completely transparent of why all these fees are happening in the beginning, then it's time to kind of ask questions.
Yeah. Well, Kyle, this has been great. And, you know, I know that we work with you every week on these types of issues. We also have several other meetings every week as we go over, you know, how we manage our tools to be more proactive, how we manage our help desk to, you know, have that, you know, vision with other consultants. So we're, you know, we really appreciate all that you give us. And, you know, we just appreciate keeping our eye on these types of balls so we don't fall into any of these traps, and we maintain a good balance, because a lot of these things you are having to, you know, you can't go too far down in one area. I mean, you can oftentimes the client is asking for two things that are diametrically opposed. They want consistency of staff, but they also want somebody that's always available on the phone, you know, 24/7. And if you give them Johnny all the time, 24/7, you'll burn them out, and then they don't get what they want, you know. So it becomes you know, how do you develop these systems to actually get the results that people want and have the right balance as you go along. So this is really good. We really appreciate you helping us with that along our path to maturity.
No problem. And I appreciate you guys spending the time to better the service of EN Computers, because at the end of the day, we are a service industry, right? And I think you and I talk about this a lot, and it's our retail background. We are here because people need help. And I think what a lot of times is IT firms get lost in that definition, where they assume and they take a perspective of the technology needs to be worked on, right? You're almost more of a mechanic. Where we're here to service the users. We are here to make technology work better for you, even when it sucks. And an IT firm that is concentrated too much on the technology and not as much on the user, well, then you might want to give EN Computers a call.
Well, thank you, Kyle. Well, this has been great. Thanks for participating, and I'll send you over the video.
All right, guys. Have a great rest of your day.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.